but everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing it.
The Tampa market. Staggering rise.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the Horn of Africa.
All right, good morning, family. Good morning, Dana. Good morning, Dana. How you doing, man? Comrade. Welcome you all this morning. So today, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see you all as we get into a very interesting discussion about the recent US-Afrika Leadership Summit 2022. We had a same summit, Obama US-Afrika Leadership Summit in 2014. And we are just having a replication of the same US-Afrika 2014 in 2022. Nothing changed, nothing added, same old, same thing. And before we get into it, so today's topic is called Biden US Africa Summit, an insult to African people, to its leaders, and to the African diaspora. And to be specific, because I am your host, the African diaspora means the African American. Insult to us from that summit. Now, we're going to see what I say, insult, what we mean by that, okay? And it's the same mind control game. And that is why this generation, we are a generation of knowledge. We are seeking information. We want to know, because Nkrumah told us we should not sleep on the imperialists, because the imperialists are not asleep. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Frank. I'm your host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series. Welcome you all this morning. Once again, I just want to thank you all for visiting our website and reading our articles. We have great articles written by great men and women. We urge you to take advantage of those articles. And we just want to say thank you for being part of our Patreon, because we have transitioned to a new channel. We are still building out this channel, so there's no way that you can donate to YouTube as usual that from the old channel. So we urge you, if you want to send your contribution, the link is posted in there where you can send your donation or your contribution there. You can go on our website as well to try to tip in your contribution as we continue this great marvelous work of our time. All right, then. So let's get into it. So the US-Afrika Leadership Summit. What are we expecting from it? And what is in that meshes? And that is why we are here. And the only thing we want from our African leaders, because they are the one in power of authority, the only thing we want from them, we want them to listen to us. And I believe they are listening to us. There's no other way you can listen to African people other than listening to African themselves. So let's get into it. We're first going to watch a video, and from that video, we're going to analyze it. And from there, we're going to go to a statement from Biden, and then we're going to go to a statement again from the chair of the US-Afrika Summit. So everything we're going to discuss here, everything is going to come from them. It's nothing going to come from our opinion, okay? What we're going to discuss is coming from them, and then we're going to look at it and see what is in the package for us. This is WCC. We don't bring something based on opinion, all right? We bring our facts, and then we look at it, and then we discuss, is this good for us? Is this bad for us? What is in the package? Okay. And what is the meshes? And then we also look at past experiences with the same people. We also look at past meeting agenda with the same people. and then discuss whether we have something in there or not. This is what it is about, okay? So let's get into it and see what we got in it. All right, so let me bring something up. So the first thing we're going to look at here is the title says Africa reject US blank check. Biden become the loser of the US-Afrika Leadership Summit. Now, first of all, this is a fact. The United States have always given African people blank check, whether it is in the US, whether it's in Africa, or whether it's in any African nation. Now, that blank check, you know what that blank check means? That blank check means promises, empty promises that have been made by the United States, by EU. That's the blank check. They have had numerous meetings with African nations and the African continent about investment, about sustainable development, about mutual cooperation, about technology, about this, about that, and all have become blank check. All have become mind games, control. All have become vanity. All have become cost 90, zero. All right. So we have come to understand that the United States have always given blank check to African people. It happened in the US here. The only time they talk about, they mention about African people in this country is election time, blank check. Election time, that's the time that we debate African issue. That's the time we'll talk about African community. That's the time we'll talk about how drugs is there. That's the time we'll talk about how the African communities are poor, school system, hospital, on a farm. That's the time we'll talk about all these things to get what? African votes. And after that, what? Blank check. Let's get into it. That was the first video.
Welcome to Asian Quick Take. I am Jacob. A three-day US-Africa summit came to a close December 15th. A White House statement said the US-Africa summit in Washington underscored the US commitment to broaden and deepen its partnership with African countries, institutions, and people. The Biden administration plans to work closely with Congress to invest at least $55 billion in Africa over the next 3 years. The United States will also appoint a new special representative of the president to follow through on the summit's commitments. President Joe Biden did not mention China in his speech at the US-Africa summit, and a White House spokesman refused to acknowledge that the summit was intended to counter Chinese influence in Africa. However, international opinion is not optimistic about the summit, believing that the US has suddenly changed its previously neglected attitude and started to pay attention to Africa, with the real intention of turning Africa into an arena for great power games and pointing the finger at China. Africa remains vital to global powers because of its fast-growing population, rich natural resources, and large voting power in the United Nations. The Biden administration views China as the most important economic and military adversary of the United States. Africa is strategically important at a time when the United States is reorienting its foreign policy to focus more on China. Washington seeks deeper diplomatic and commercial engagement with African countries to counter China's rising influence on the continent. The Council on Foreign Relations noted that the US-Africa Summit aims to underscore the US commitment to the continent, as China is deepening its ties with Africa. In recent years, Washington has been criticized for its relative lack of engagement with Africa. Africa is increasingly a site of great power competition, but US investment in Africa is far lower than in China. According to a report this year by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, the presence of US companies in Africa is not only lower than that of Chinese companies, but in some respects even lower than that of countries such as Turkey. For too long, US relations with Africa have been neglected and a trust deficit has emerged, the effects of which are difficult to overcome. Former AU representative to the US, Alekana Chikamburi Kuhio, believes there is little hope for a US-Africa summit. She said US officials undermine the relationship between Africa and Washington by treating Africans as if they need help or need to be told what to do. The US needs to stop doing that and respect Africans. She believes the US-Africa summit will be a failure unless Americans treat Africans as equals. The Biden administration started the second US-Africa summit with a trust deficit. But that's exactly what the US West, which is used to thinking in terms of hegemony, likes to do. In their view, offering money in exchange for the goodwill of Africa, if they cannot exchange for what they want, they will use force to rob. Bloomberg reported that Biden welcomed African leaders to reverse the image of the US neglecting Africa. Biden is trying to change the perception among Africans that the US is neglecting the continent as China and Russia move into Africa. But US officials acknowledge they face an uphill battle to convince African leaders. They are committed to reversing years of US neglect of Africa. The US is trying to build friendly relations with Africa at a time of major global power realignments, especially as the crisis in Ukraine became a catalyst for the US to draw in friends against China and Russia. When South African Minister of International Relations and Cooperation Pandor met with US Secretary of State Blinken in August, she criticized the West for adopting a condescending and bullying attitude toward Africa. She made it clear that South Africa has different views from the US on China, Ukraine, and Israel-Palestine. China's success in Africa is particularly irritating to Washington. Over the past 20 years, China has expanded its influence on the African continent. China's direct involvement in Africa through loans, major infrastructure and technology projects has made it harder for other countries, such as the United States, to compete with it. In fact, African countries and populations view cooperation with China more favorably. A 2022 survey of African youth showed that some 77% of African youth consider China to be the most influential foreign power in Africa. It is already a fact that the BRICS partnership brings prosperity to the African continent. US aid to Africa is less about assistance and rehabilitation than it is about handouts and intimidation, with political strings attached. Biden pledged $55 billion in aid money to Africa over the next 5 years. And regardless of whether this is enough money, in terms of US policy stability, Biden has only 2 years left in office. But making a promise for the next 5 years looks like an empty glove anyhow. The US-Africa summit is just a political farce in which the US indulges in the illusion of world domination and unilaterally demands that Africa follow the strategy of great power competition. African countries are scared away by the obscene power of the US-Africa's desire to sever its ties with China is a delusion that cannot be realized. It's the end of this video. Thank you for watching.
All right, so that's the first video we watch, and we're going to analyze this video here. Now, first of all, in 1962, there was a Gambia vice president, I think Zambia vice president, and he said, we Africans, if we don't take care of our independence, the colonizer will come back to the African continent as investor to recolonize us. If we don't take care of our independence, the colonizer will come back to Africa as investors to recolonize us. And that is what exactly happening today. The colonizer have regrouped themselves to go back to the African continent as investors. How can someone who colonized you yesterday, who dehumanized you yesterday, come back today as a colonizer? Now, we have to ask ourselves, why are they coming back as investors? First of all, these are people that have been on the African continent before China. They've been on the African continent since 1884, the Brethren Conference. China just came on the African continent in the 2000s. So the question then becomes, why today the United States investment in Africa is far less than the investment of China in Africa when China just came in Africa in the 2000s. But the United States and Europe been in Africa since 1884. Under no circumstances should the United States and Europe be in Africa trying to compete with China and can't even get to China, the level China is right now in Africa. Now, today's discussion is not going to be in favor of China, whether in favor of US, whether in favor of Europe. That is not my concern. That is not our concern. The discussion is about Africa and African people. Period. The discussion is about who Africa favor and who make impact on the African people and the African continent. That's the discussion. Nothing more and nothing less. I don't care what the United States have promised. First of all, it is an insult. The United States talking about $55 billion. Let me tell the United States. $55 billion is nothing. You're talking about 55 nations in Africa. Now, divide $55 billion by 55 nations in Africa. Now, and it said that $55 billion going to be invested in Africa in 3 years, right? Now, divide that $55 billion by 55 nations. That is not $55 billion again. Now, when you divide that $55 billion by 55 nations, divide that amount again by 3. Because it said, though that $55 billion will be invested in 3 years. So if you divide the $55 billion by 55 nations, right? That could be 1 billion, 1 billion, right? Now, divide that 1 billion by 3 years. Okay, yeah, by 3 years or 5 years, right? Divided by 3 years or 5 years. What is the investment the United States giving to Africa? What is the investment the United States giving to folks? I mean, look at the thing clear. Look at the clear picture. What is that investment the United States giving to Africa? $55 billion. That's not money. 55 nations. 55 billion. You divide it by 55 nations. And then you divide, after you divide it, divide that amount again, break it down by 5 years. Is that money? That is not money. Africa in the diaspora, do you know how much billion dollars they send back home? 82 to 85 billion dollars. That is what Africa in the diaspora send back home. 82 to 85 billion dollars. Then you're talking about 55. And then you break that 55 into how they call it, divided by 55 nations. And then after that, break it down again by 5 years. How much you spending? Can you compete with China? How much you spending? United States, you are a failure. That is why the topic of this discussion today, it says the US-Africa Leadership Summit is an insult. It is an insult to African people, to African leader, and the African diaspora. Now, how it is an insult to the African in America? Joe Biden never support reparation. He never support reparation. He was asked if he support reparation. He said no, he don't support reparation. And he's not going to give reparation to African people in this country. Then how then it is Joe Biden is talking about the United States sin in enslaving African people. The United States sin on African people, on the African continent. And then he's pledging 55. First of all, Mr. Biden, solve the problem in America first. Folks, let me tell you something. This is how they want to bring confusion between African people, African in the diaspora and African on the African continent. Now, this will make African in the diaspora to say, wait a minute, why will the United States give $55 billion to Africa for her role played in the demise of African people? While we are in America here, we've been asking President Biden for reparation, and he said he don't support reparation. And then he's talking about giving reparation to African people for the crime or the sin of America. Now you will see confusion between the African in America and the African in Africa. But this $55 billion is nothing, like I said, divide 55 by 55 nations. And then break that 55, break that amount that you have divided to 5 years. The United States will be spending nothing as compared to Africa in the diaspora. They spend $82 to $85 billion every year. They send it to the African continent. So this is how they will bring confusion between the African in the diaspora and African on the African continent. And then we start fighting among ourselves. And then the African on the African in the diaspora will think that the African in Africa betrayed them. They will think that we are not fighting together. So we betray them. And then what will happen henceforth? They will use the African in the diaspora to go fight their own brothers and sisters. And they will be fighting useless war. They will be quarreling among themselves. If we don't be careful, this is what's going to happen. If we don't be careful here, this is what exactly going to happen. But we want to let the president know that $55 billion is nothing. You can keep it. Because that $55 billion is not going to be used in a year. You're talking about 5 years. Divide $55 billion by 55 nations. And after that, break it down into 5 years. How much each nation will be spending? Or we have to be spending 5 years' time. $55 billion is nothing, President Biden. That is an insult to African people. That is an insult to the African leaders that sat down in that meeting. That is an insult to African leaders that paid their way to come to that useless summit, that failed summit, and sat down in a failed summit. That is an insult to them. And then after that, they have to go back. That is an insult to them. Now, let's get further into that video. They also say they want to bring Africa to be part of the G20, the United Nations. Let me say this to African leaders. How long have you been advocating for Africa to have a permanent seat in the United Nations? And this same superpower have been saying no. The only nation have been fighting for you to have a permanent seat in the United Nations is the same Russia. It's the same Russia that bringing the African problem to the light. But they see US, they see EU, all of them been saying no and voting against you. They see US and they see EU, all of them. When you go for the UN summit, what do? They all leave the house. The house become empty when you speaking. And then time to speak, for them to speak, the house become packed. They all come back. Why it is today, they are saying they want you to have a seat in a G20 or with the United Nations. Why didn't you listen to you for? Why did they listen to you when you were advocating, when you were asking them? This time around, why are they saying they want you to have? Now they are the one advocating for you. We have to look into this critically. Just because we wanted it and they did not agree, and now they want it, means that we should agree. It means it is not in our favor. Now, Africa becoming part of the G20, it sounds nice, right? It sounds good, right? But it's a failure. What's going to happen here is, once you become part of that G20 Africa, you have no more voice. At least you are not part of the G20. You have voice to be neutral. You have voice to say, no, I'm not voting against this, or I'm not voting for this. You stay neutral and nobody have a problem with you. But if you become part of that G20, it's just like who control NATO? It's the United States that control NATO. You become part of that G20, you have no voice. The United States control you because, first of all, what happened here? You're not bringing income to the table. The United States is the one that control the World Bank. EU is the one that control the World Bank or the World Trade Center. They control it. You don't control the World Bank. You don't control the World Trade Center. They control it. You bring nothing to the table. You'll be an empty vessel of that G20. Henceforth, anytime the United States want to go against anything, you will have to agree, because you cannot extend yourself and you cannot say no, because you're part of that G20. You have to agree to it. Listen to us, African leaders. The best place to listen to African problem is by African people, not anyone else. So being part of that G20 is a mind game, because once you get part of that G20, that means you have crossed and come to the side of the colonizer. You will no longer vote against, vote in favor of Russia, or extend yourself, or extend from China, or vote in favor of China. And first of all, you will no longer vote in anything favor the African continent. There's nothing you will vote that will favor the African continent. We are a continent. We are bigger than America. We are bigger than EU. We should prove to them that we are a continent and we are bigger than North America. We are bigger than Europe. And we have everything it takes. Listen, African leaders, look around you. What have you been saying? They've been backing you. They've been backing you. It is about time. It is a sign. But I don't know if you are saying it. It is a sign that you have the power. They know. They have recognized it. I don't know if you have recognized it. You have the power. Do not let them get you because of hardship or because of this global issue. We can come from out of it. We have been through difficulties, through slavery, through colonization. We came out. This is nothing compared to slavery. This is nothing compared to colonization, we can come out of it. We have the manpower, use it on the African continent. We have the resources, use it on the African continent. It is not about paper money. It is about the resources and to control. $55 billion is nothing. There are Africans who have more than $55 billion. Because that $55 billion, if you break it down by 55 nations, and then you break it down by 5 years, it is not $55 billion. There are many Africans on the African continent, many Africans in the diaspora that have more than that. If you divide that by 55 nations and then break it down into 5 years, how much? In fact, that's nothing. Floyd Mayweather can just put his hands in his pocket. If you want to break it down now, after you divide out 55 by 55 country, and then you break it down by 5 years, it's something that Floyd Mayweather can just put his hands in his pocket and do like this. It's something that LeBron James can put in his pocket and do like this. It's something that Dangote of Nigeria can just do like this, put in his pocket and flash it like this. It's something that you, many African leaders that have your bank's account in Western country in America, it's something that you can just do like this and waste it. Today, they are African musicians. It's nothing to them. That is just money that they will put in their pocket and spray on their people. So that is an insult to African people. Let's get to the next one. So we are not going to sit and agree to the United States. First of all, this is a summit that was held in 2014 by one of the most talked about president, one of the most talked about in U.S. history, Barack Obama. One of the men most talked about U.S. president that will stand and just speak and just talk, very eloquent in speaking, in putting out words. One of the most brilliant U.S. president ever, Barack Obama. When he speak, people cry, people lie on the floor here and there. What he didn't say, what he didn't do. Right? But what did we see from that US-Africa summit? It is the same message that President Biden brought out again about development. How long these people will come and talk about development on the African continent and we can see it? How long are they going to keep giving you a blank check? By the way, it was the same way today their military are proliferating on the African continent. It was the same way they said we're going to have a joint military called Afrikan, and it will be there to fight terrorists. It will be there, meet us to fight this, that. What are they doing there? They are there mostly to create proxy wars, creating problems. Let all of these things come in. Let's see what Biden said here. The US summit is a failure. It's not real. It's fake. Now, this is President Biden here. I'm not going to play the entire video because it's long. It's about 16. I don't even want to listen to the whole thing. It's not worth listening to the whole thing because, and this again, this video here, right, that I'm about to play, it just remind we African about election time in America here. This is how exactly they do. And this is how they've been giving empty promises to the African people, both home and abroad.
being here, particularly since I said Morocco was about to play as the first African nation in the semifinals of the World Cup. Distinguished heads of state, leaders of regional and global institutions, and of course, representatives of more than 300 companies, African and American. Welcome to Washington. And I want to recognize our co-hosts, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the Corporate Council of Africa, two great champions for building and growing ties of business and trade and investment between Africa and the United States, as well as the members of my administration and the members of Congress who are here today. All the members of Congress, please stand up if you're here so I can identify who you are. There's a man. All right, I'm sure you're out there somewhere.
So, first of all, what did you notice? No one stood up. All right? No one stood up for African leaders when he said all members of Congress in the building or in here should stand up. No one stood up. He said, okay, I'm sure you are somewhere around up there. That was, oh my God, disrespect to the African leaders. Who going to stand up to their subject? And that is what exactly I mean. That is what they told him, President Biden, that is too much. Who going to stand up to their subject? Who going to stand up for their subject? No, our subject will stand up for us, but not we standing up to our subject. That is what exactly I mean. And he said, oh, I'm sure you are somewhere out there. So are you telling me there was no congressman in there? So it was just all African leaders and the president in there when he asked for all Congress people to stand up, to be recognized. And no one stood up. And he said, oh, I'm sure you are somewhere out there. If they were out there, you, president, the United States president, asked these people to wake up. And none of them did it. That was a disrespect to you. And not only even to African leaders. But I'm not here to discuss that. But a disrespect to the African leaders. They was calling African leaders subject. Who's going to stand up to their subject? And it was telling President Biden, are you serious? Are you going to make us stand to our subject just because we want something from our subject? Just because we're trying to make our subject think that we are on our side? On their side? Or just because we want to make our subject to think that we are all leaders of the world? No, we are not all leaders of the world. There are leaders and leaders among leaders. There are kings among kings. They are our subject. We are not going to stand and bring ourselves down or below them. African leaders. Maybe you were in there, you did not catch that. You were sitting in there, but you did not catch that. But we are bringing it to you. That was an insult again to the African leaders. That is what today's topic is. The Biden US-Africa Summit is an insult. If you didn't know, that was an insult. Let me see a US president that will leave from here and go to Africa or in one of the African nations. And then the leader of that country tell the Congress people or the lawmaker to stand up to recognize President Biden or to recognize the Western leader. All of them will stand up. Because why? They are subject. But they came to the so-called Caucasian nation and they asked them to stand up to be recognized. And none of them stood up. And he said, oh, I guess you are somewhere around in there. That was an insult to the African leader. Prove to these people that you are leaders. Stop running to their meetings. Stop running to their summit. Stop running to their conference or conferences. Stop it. You have a very big, great continent. What do you need? You need nothing for America. You need nothing from Europe. They need something from you. Aren't you seeing it? Aren't you see what is going on? The entire world focusing on Africa to survive. Their focus are on Africa to survive. Aren't you seeing that? Man, Africa, what is wrong? It is time. This is our time that we need to put Africa the place it need to be. This is our time to let the world know that indeed we are not the descriptions you gave us. Like Karen Alvin said, how can I be this when I know myself? How can I be anti-Semitic when I know my history? When I know myself, when I'm identifying myself with my people, with my root. It is time to identify who you are. It is time to tell the world. It is not the identity they gave you, the identification they gave you.
Look, this forum is about building connections. It's about closing deals. And above all, it's about the future, our shared future. We've known for a long time that Africa's success and prosperity is essential to assuring a better future for all of us, not just for Africa. I've been engaged in these issues going back to my days as a young man in the United States Senate. When I was on the Foreign Relations Committee, I was chairman of the African Affairs Subcommittee and got to spend a lot of time in Africa. I visited almost all of your countries. When I was vice president serving with President Obama, we hosted the first US-Africa Leaders Summit, including US-Africa Business Forum. We saw so clearly the enormous potential that we could harness if we did it together. And holding the first of its kind summit in 2014 was a watershed moment to cement new kinds of partnerships between our nations. Partnerships not to create political obligation, not or foster dependence, but to spur shared success. I emphasize shared success and opportunity.
I took that video out. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I just want you to see the beginning of it. Right now, he mentioned about the 2014 Obama Africa Leadership Summit, right? And I'm glad he talked about development, he talked about all kind of things, and none of those things were fruitful. He even talked about democracy. Democracy was never fruitful, right? Since that 2014, look at the African continent. What have America done on the African continent in terms of democracy? Their form of democracy, if you say no to them, then you are not a democratic nation or institution. If you want to stay on your own to challenge them, then they say you are a dictator, you are a tyranny. That's the kind of form of democracy the United States is talking about, Joe Biden is talking about. What have they created on the African continent in terms of democracy? None. Now, the development he's talking about, a partnership. What kind of partnership have they created on the African continent since 2014? None. But failures, proxy war, militarism. That's the kind of partnership they have created there. So this speech that he gave here, it just reminds me of election time in America here. When they want African people vote, that's the time they will come to their knee. If even it causes them to wear African cloth or Kanti cloth, they will. That's how desperate people can be. if they need something from you. And at this point, the United States is desperate. At this point, EU is desperate. So they will get on their knee. But just because they are getting on their knee, that doesn't mean it is from their heart. Getting on their knee, financially, they are still powerful. Once you fall for it and it rise up, what would be? They are no longer on the knee. Once you fall for it and they stand up, they are no longer on their knee. They become powerful again and they dominate you. You are not bringing nothing to the table in their mind. But yes, indeed, Africa is bringing something to the table. What is that? The resources. And not just that, the labor capacity. Not just that, the human resource development. What are both home and abroad? We bring all of these things to the table. But they don't see it as anything. Because at the end of the day, they think that once who bring the money, the paper, is the one that have the power. That's how they have made the world to think. And we have to come out of that. It's delusional. We have to come out. We have to tell them the men that have the resources, the human capacity, development, is the men that control it. Because at the end of the day, we have everything it takes. So just because someone come down on their knee, that doesn't mean they are begging you from their heart. Just because someone wear a cloth to identify with you, that doesn't mean it is from their heart. Once they take that cloth off, they become who they were. And they do away with that cloth. Why didn't it happen during the George Floyd incident? When African people have turned their back, they say, you know what, enough is enough. Why didn't we see the entire Democrat, the war content cloth in solidarity, right? But after that, what happened? During election time, what Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you are not African enough, or you are not African American enough. You know what I mean? If you don't vote for me, you are not slave. If you don't vote for me, you are not my subject. Oh yeah, the subject voted for him, the slave voted for him. But after that, what? He told them, I am not supporting reparation. You are a slave. Why should I give reparation to a slave? That's what it means. Let's continue. US-Africa summit is a failure. We are not going to agree. The reason why it's a failure, because we are going to look at past experiences. We are going to look at past conferences. We are going to look at past promises that have been made with the African people and compare it to this current one and see whether it is something good or whether it would benefit or whether it would be fruitful. And that is all we're doing. We are just looking at past conferences that have been here, past leadership summit that have been here, promises that have been given, blank checks that have been bouncing by that we can't even take to the bank because it's blank. That's all we're doing. That's all. we are not saying that we don't want to partnership with America. We don't want to do this. No, we are just saying it because of past experiences with America and EU. That's all. That's all. That's all. You know, you give what you take. You sow what you reap. Or you reap what you sow. That's all. So America, you are reaping what you sow. That's all. We are just telling you, you are not a nation by his or her word. You don't stand by your word. That's all. We give you real check and you give a bad check. That's all we're telling you. We can't continue giving you real check and you continue giving a bad check. And your banks is full. Your bank overflowing while our banks are empty because you keep giving a bad check and we keep giving you good check. That's all we're telling you. That's all. That is why anytime you make promises, we're not going to come with opinion. We're going to take your promises and then compare it with past. Like I said, under no circumstances at that time, America should be competing or EU should be competing with China in Africa. You've been on the African continent since 1884. What did you do there? And you allow China, who just came in 2000s, to dominate you? And you now running behind China? You now begging African nations or African leaders to come on your side? Hell no. That class said, moving forward. And that's it. We are moving forward. We are not coming back. And like Nkrumah said, forward ever, backward never. We are not coming back to the old days. We are not coming back to colonialism. We are not coming back to imperialism. We are not coming to be subjugated. We are not coming back to be identified by people who don't identify with us, who give us names. We are not coming back to people who call insignificant, jaw breach. We are not coming back to people who call us shithole, Trump. We are not coming back to people who disrespect us. And that's all. America, we are sorry, but not sorry. Plain blank. You are harvesting what you sow. And we have no regret. We are having no regret for decision that we make. We are having no regret for what we say. And we say unapologetically. Because when you are doing yours to us, you did it unapologetically. We don't believe you. That's the bottom line. We don't believe you because we have believed you for so long. And when we take that trust, we take it and we're not giving it back. Period. Let's continue. We look at the next one. Statement by the chair of the US-Africa Leadership Summit. I mean, we are just bringing what is, we're not going to bring any opinion in here. What they say, that's what we're going to bring and compare to history. That's all. The truth shall set us free. It is not a time where African people will just go and sit and just listen. And no, we will question you. And our question will be based on what you do. Period. You think you're going to find it easy on the African continent? You are not going to find it easy. You found it easy before, but not again. You are not going to find it easy. So let's see what the chair said. Now, this is the White House, right? Let's see what the chairman said. So, here's what we're going to break it down. All right? And let the United States that you have made empty promises, just is just another one. Now, statement by the chair of the US-Africa Leaders Summit, Washington, D.C. Okay? Now, so this was during President Obama time, right? So let's see this here. Now, he said, President Obama welcomed leaders from across the African continent. Now, this was the 2014 African Leadership Summit that was here, right? Now, what Biden said There was nothing. It is not different from what was in here. Okay, what they put in here. So we're going to judge them by the past. All right, and see what the promise they gave us, whether they did anything, because it came all blank check. Now, President Obama welcomed leaders from across the across the African continent to Washington, D.C. for 3 days US-Afrika Leaders Summit, the first of its kind, the largest event in U.S. president, the largest event any U.S. president has held with African heads of state and government. The summit strengthened ties between the United States and one of the world's most dynamic and fastest growing region. Now, let's expand on that. They say one of the world's most dynamic and fastest growing region. Now, the question then becomes, who made Africa to become one of the world's most? Who made Africa to become one of the world's dynamic? Who made Africa to become one of the world's fastest growing region? Who? This was 2014. Again, we say China started having relationship with Africa in the 2000s. Now, America and Europe been having relationship with Africa in the 1600s, colonization time, right? But we're going to take it from 1884, okay? Now, they've been having relationship with Africa, let's just say 1884, Berlin Conference, after they share Africa among themselves, right? What did they do? Because when they are talking about one of the most dynamic and fastest, they are just giving credit to China. Because that's the time actually Africa starts seeing her potential as a continent. Unlike the United States or EU, they dictate to Africa. Because for each time Africa began to rise. In fact, honor China, I don't want to say honor China. Africa is not honor China. But what I'm saying here is, with China and Africa relationship, African leaders who saw the potential, or who have seen the potential of Africa rising up and taking her place, China have never gone into assassinate any of those leaders. It have never been known that China have gone in and assassinated directly or indirectly any African leaders. It have now been said that the African leader that said no to China policy or agreement, they went in and sanctioned that African nation. But unlike the United States, that is what honor their leadership or honor their friendship, Africa did not grow. Africa did not see her potential. Because any African leader that stood up to them, they assassinated them directly or indirectly. And they also put sanction on those African nations. China did not do that. So that is why, hold on to them when they say one of the most. Hold on to you. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Let's continue here. I'm glad you said one of the most, because it was not by America, it was not by EU that Africa today, they can say one of the most dynamic and faster growing economy in the region or in the world. Let's continue here. The summit advanced our shared interest in increased US-Africa trade and US investment in Africa. Now, it's the same thing Joe Biden saying. 2014, what investment have the United States done in Africa? Sanction investment, carrier investments, other money investments. supporting dictator investments like Togo, like Cameroon, and you name the rest. Highlighting America's commitment to Africa. What is that commitment? Let's say highlighting America's commitment to Africa's security. What is the security Africa have? When all around Africa, the continent, there are war, there are confusion, there are conflict in some other ways. What is that security? What is that security in Mali? What is that security in Chad? What is that security in Nigeria, Boko Haram? What is that security in Niger? What is that security in Sudan? What is that security? They also say it's democratic development. What is the democratic development in Africa that the United States have engaged in? Folks, no one gave democracy to any nation unless the people themselves found a system of government that will suit themselves, that will suit them, that will listen to the people, that the people will love. If a nation have a system of government that listen to the people, that do the will of the people, that system is a democracy. There is no like specific way to say a nation got to be like that then before a democracy. No. Any nation that pay attention to its people, to its human development capacity, to its needs of the people, and nothing else, you are a democracy. Last system of government is democracy. I don't know how you want to call it, how you want to do it. It's democracy. As long as people are living freely and the people are happy and life are good for them, no interference of outside influence, is a government. And with that kind of government, the United States and EU, they do not want that kind of government on the African continent. And then they said, this was 2014, they said by enabling discussion of tangible action that can be taken to deepen the US-Africa partnership, the summit foster stronger tie between the United States and Africa. They said 2014. Then why is it weakened? Why that tie, when you guys had this summit, you did not foster that tie. You did not make that tie stronger. What is the investment that was promised? Africa. Nobody, just to tell you, nobody, an imperialist nation will not go to a country that they colonize, a nation, a people that they enslave to develop. It will not happen. And we're going to show some of that here today, what they said to it. Now, they said the theme of the summit was investing in the next generation. Since 2014, what generation in Africa that the United States or EU has invested in? That Obama, because it was Obama that initiated this. What generation that they have invested in Africa then? Because the first video that we watched, they said an opinion poll that was carried on, that was done, and they asked about US, Africa, and China, Africa. About 75 to 80% of the youth say they favor China in Africa over the United States. Now, let me take this out here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let me take this out. So you are saying that. So that was 2014. And 2014, nothing different from the 2022. So what was said in 2014, they just took part of it in there, all right? And they just put it into 2022, all right? The thing that the only difference is, I think in 2022, they talk about technology. All right. So they just throw things in there because they know the population these days, when you talk about technologies, the youth, they will get into it. All right. But again, the opinion poll that came out, the youth said, when you even talk about technology, they favor China in Africa over the United States in Africa. Now, America, they see that you sow is what you are whipping. That's all. They see that you sow is what you are harvesting. This is not to say we are speaking in favor of China. We are just telling you, you are playing the mind game, and we are not going to fall for that mind game. Because at the end of the day, that is what happened. Like Jomo Kenyatta said, when a white man went to Africa, the white man said, gave the Bible to African people, and then said, let us pray. And then the African man closes his eye to pray while the white man's eye was open. By the time they got through praying, when the black man opened his eye, what left in a black man, or what left of the black man, was the Bible. And then what left with the white man that said, let us pray, was the land and the resources. That's how they come up. And that's how Jomo Kenyatta put it. And this time around, you coming to us telling us we should pray. Yeah, we can pray with you, but we are not going to close our eyes. We are not going to bap our eyes. The reason why we are praying with you, because we just want to understand you more and more. We want you to come out so that we can understand you more and more as we are continuing this liberation. So we're not going to say we're not going to pray with you, because we want you to come and pray so that we can know how you think. So that we can know your next step. Because this is how we're going to understand your next step as you speak. And we look at past. Oh yes, in America here, that's what they do, right? Most of the cases or court cases, sometimes before they come to conclusion, they have to look at past cases and see whether they have similarity. And then before they draw their conclusion, right? That's how it is. So we are just looking at past issues with you, past promises with you, past circumstances with you, past hardship with you. We are just, in fact, we have many blank checks. We want to give you your blank checks. We have many blank checks that have been piling since or how they call it, Dr. Kings even talk about it. What the United States gave us is all blank check. We had a pile up. So we want to give it back to you. We don't need it. That's all. Okay? So let's continue to the next page. Let's continue to the next discussion. Now, the next discussion here is said Biden apologize. Okay? So let's see here. Why Biden apologize? Biden did not apologize for the crime committed, right? Biden did not apologize to African people in America here, right, for slavery. But Biden apologized to the African continent. What a hypocrisy. So you see, folks, last week I read a Bible verse to you, right? And I'm going to read it to you today. It says, be careful with them because their words are like butter. Be careful with them because their words are like oil, softer than oil, softer than butter, smooth. But in their minds, I war. In their hands, I swore to devour you. They are like lions just waiting to devour you. So just because they are talking so smooth and softer, that does not mean they are real. Be careful with them. Biden said he cannot apologize to African people in America. He do not support reparation. But then, why it is, this is a complete hypocrisy. Why it is, Biden is apologizing to African people during the US-African Leadership Summit 2022. This is complete hypocrisy. Now, again, let us be mindful and careful here. This is divide and conquer tactics. Let us be careful and mindful. because this alone again will make African people, African diaspora, to start going against their brothers and sisters on the African continent. But then I make sure this is divide and conquer games. We have to be on top of our game and know the aim of these people. Nkrumah said we should not sleep. We should not sleep also means we should be able to analyze critically these people when they speak. Why did they say certain things? Why are they doing certain things? That is what Nkrumah meant, that we should not sleep. Now, Biden apologized to African leaders for America's original sin, but Biden refused to apologize to African people in America for America's original sins in America. Hypocrite. If America think she's going to put African home and abroad together, it's not going to happen. It might have happened in the past, but it's not going to happen in the present. We move. It's not going to happen like Class said, we move. We move, we move. Forward ever, backward never. Now, let's continue here. I'm glad America was able to recognize her original sin, but this is not a time. This is not well. Thank you that you recognize it, but thank you not. Thank you and no thank you. Let's continue. President Joe Biden apologized for the unimaginable cruelty. This is his word. President Joe Biden apologized for the unimaginable cruelty of America's original sin of slavery during a White House summit with African leaders this week. Well, at least one leader mocked America in China increasing influence in the continent. And who was that leader? That leader was Paul Kagame. Now, let me make a statement here because maybe I may not be able to get to it down the line or I may slip from my mind. Recently, what we've been saying with Paul Kagame in Washington. Now, African, let me tell you something. If we have ever had a doubt about Paul Kagame, this is not a time. This is a time that we should use Paul Kagame. Now, let us ask ourselves, why should America this time around come out to be pointing him as Paul Kagame role in DRC Congo? They say United States government or they say United States nation was the one that trained Paul Kagame. The CIA or the FBI, the CIA was the one that trained Paul Kagame and the Uganda president, Yoweri Museveni. Why it is today that the United States is pointing fingers at Paul Kagame of the role in DRC Congo. Today, the United States is pointing fingers at Paul Kagame of supporting the M23 rebel. First of all, let me make you understand. There are many rebels in DRC, not only the M23. There are many rebels in DRC. But why there's one M23 is signal out, and then the United States is pointing fingers at Paul Kagame? Why the United States is pointing fingers at her subjects? We're going to see some of the reason. Either because the subject have recognized that the subject have been used for so long against our own people, and the subject have realized that something is wrong somewhere, and the subject now have come out and pointing finger at her master and said, no, something wrong here. I cannot continue being a subject while I go against my people, while your people in America are living a lively life, and your people are calling my people poor. Your people are calling my people suffering people. Your people are calling my people third world country. When in fact, I should be the one to be the first war and you be the third war. President Paul Kagame is giving messages all around the world. And they are dead. And America does not like it. So they want to make sure to silence him. And I will tell you, if we have ever been wanting to silence President Paul Kagame, this is not the time. We should rather use him to speak and to mobilize other African leaders. Let's continue and see. I will tell you what I mean by that. Now, he went as far as saying, we remember the stolen. This is Joe Biden speaking. We remember the stolen men and women and children were brought to our show in chains. Biden said Wednesday after promising the continent $55 billion to fight climate change and increase trade. My nation original sin was that, period. That's what he said. My nation original sin was that, period. Well, President Biden, let me remind you. If your nation original sin is what you want to pay $55 billion for, it's small. First of all, start for America here first. Start from here first. Recognize the sin from here first. Recognize the people from here first. Apologize to them first. Pay reparation to them here first. And then, before you can leave to go outside. But you're not going to do that because we know that this you're saying right here is a means to get African people somewhere so that you can get to what you want to get, so that you can cross the bridge. But you are not going to cross that bridge. So you want to use $55 billion to pay reparation for the sin committed by the United States, right? But guess what? That $55 billion, you already said how you're going to use it. $55 billion divided by 55 African nations. And then break it down. After that, break it down by 5 years. You're going to be talking about some $1,000, some thousands you're going to be spending. We offer that. Not just money that African people can just take from their pocket and spray it around. They call it money ring. So you can keep your $55 billion. Maybe you can add it up. If you show it is from your heart to apologize for your original sin, it should start from America here. Because the people here are still under trauma. They are still traumatized. And they are still asking for reparation. They are still asking for their identity. Their identity we are stolen. Give them their identity. Their name we are taken from them. If you show you want to recognize your original sin, even as that the people been telling you for their history to be taught in this country, and you said no. If their history that been taught, it will be critical. Because you don't want to be guilty. Because if the African history is being taught, you'll be guilty. You don't want to be. So that is a hypocrite to say you're going to Africa to go invest $55 billion. Keep your investment. Keep your $1 billion. Because we've been past that. We've been past that. Those investments should have been done since 1884. Those investments should have been done since Africa started getting independent in the 60s. But no, you went ahead directly or indirectly and assassinated African leaders who wanted good. You did not work with African leaders who actually wanted democracy for Africa. You did not work for African leaders with African leaders who wanted to liberate Africans, who wanted for Africa to be at the world stage as well, who wanted for the African generation to have better life. You did not work with them. You saw them as enemies. You killed them. You assassinated them. So that is why we are not listening to you. That is why we have you are giving you a lot of blank checks. We are not listening to you when you speak. It's fake. It's not real. It's fake. It's not real. We are not. So, President Biden, you can keep your apology. It's not real. Start from here. Heal the land here first. And when you heal the land, then maybe our brothers and sisters can follow you along and come on the African continent. First of all, when they are going on the African continent to find their route, do you sponsor them? They have to sponsor themselves. They have to pay their own way to go and see the places their forefathers were put. The dungeon they were put. Go and see the gate of no return. You don't sponsor them. And then you want to talk about their original sin. How will you talk about the original sin? How will you remember it? Or you talk about it and when you don't sympathize with the people themselves. The people you say you rule. The people you say you govern. The people you say you identify with. You don't recognize it. President Biden, are you real? You're not real. This is why we said that Africa Leadership Summit is fake. It's to get African people to sleep. And then you wake up with your claws, the eagle, right? Once they go back to bed, and then you come back with your eagle claws and strangle them and say, I get you. And then said, I get you. But guess what, folks? Our forefathers did not lie to us. I'm going back to the Bible to prove something to you about why they said we should be careful with these people. Okay? Be with me. So, let's go to the Bible first. This Bible here, we will use the same Bible to liberate our people. Because the same Bible were used to lie to our people. Okay? Now, last week, I told you, the white man did not write this Bible. The white man translated this Bible to English, and I told you why. Now, the white man wrote separate Bible, was called the slave Bible. This is not a slave Bible, okay? It's just like I gave you, let me just give you a scenario. What kind of scenario I will give you, man? Let me see. I gave you something. I said, go and buy me, how to call it? Go and buy me Kool-Aid and come and fetch me orange juice, right? And then you go and buy the Kool-Aid, right? And then I asked you to measure the bottle. Maybe I was like, just use one bottle or use two bottles, right? Because I want it really thick and sweet, something like that, right? And then you went and came, but because you want more, right? Instead of 2 bottles, you use 3 bottles. Or instead of you using the whole, how they call it, Kool-Aid, you use maybe 1.5 packs. And then the other half pack, you use it on something different. Just something like that, right? That's what happened. So that's why they had a slave Bible. This is not a Bible they gave to our people. All right? If they're going to give this to our people and our people read it, they are going to understand that, but they are in here. So there was Bible called slave Bible. So if you go in a museum in Washington, D.C., you're going to see the slave Bible that they wrote separate. So after they translated your history into English, because you are going to lose your tongue, your mother tongue, or your father tongue. You are going to lose your language, your identity. Let's say everything is going to be erased. So this is going to be English because you are going to speak the language of the oppressor. And that's the only language you're going to remember, English. Now, you will read this to understand that, but wait a minute, I am here. So they then gave you this, actually, they gave you what they call the slave Bible, which is in the museum in Washington, D.C. And the slave Bible, basically, was just telling you, obey your master, obey your master slave. Okay? So they repeat that over and over. But let's go to this Bible and read something from here, this book. All right, this is your history. All right, read something from here, and then we will continue. Bear with me. This is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series. We will take knowledge from every angle. Okay, the last time we read, and it said precept by precept, line by line. Okay, little here, little there, to make our people to understand, and that is what we're doing. All right, now it have come a time you don't have to go to theology school to learn how to preach or to learn to understand history. All right, now let's go to Psalm. Okay, let's go to Psalm 55, because we have to understand that what our forefather told us. Right now, 55 verse 21. I read it last week, but I want to read it again because it falls into the meshes of today. Let's see here, 21. It says, the word, W-O-R-D, the word from their mouth, right? The word of his mouth, like what Buddy was saying, oh, I apologize for America original sin, blah, 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 right? Now, the word of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. The next one. His word were softer than oil, yet were they drawn sword. Now, that is the first part. Be careful with words like this. A matter of fact, the Most High himself. You know, a lot of time when black people talk, they say, wow, black people like shouting, right? Black people like shouting. They like, no. That's how we are, because the Lord himself, the Most High himself, he was not a man that was talk slow. Now, when you watch the, how they call it, Passion of Christ, right? You see the white man sitting there talking slow. It was nothing like Christ-like. Christ was not, in fact, Christ is not a man. The Most High is not a man that talks soft. I'm going to show you that today again. The Most High was not a man that talks soft. When you watch Jesus Christ of Nazareth, right? He acting so soft talking. No, that's how the enemies talk. And that is why he said, that is why he's telling us, be careful of people like that. And the Lord is telling us, that is not of him. He's telling us, be careful of people like that. They are not real. They are the enemies. They are the devil. Be careful with them. So just because somebody is coming to you softly, nicely, smiling, that doesn't mean you should fall for it. What is behind it? Let's continue here. Let's go to Zechariah 11. Let's go to Zechariah 11. Okay? Now, 11 verse 5. Let's see verse 5 here. Zechariah 11 verse 5. Let's see something here. Verse 5. It says, now, let's start from 4. That says the Lord, my God, right? Feed the flock of the slaughter. Now, 5. You know, anytime they come to you with sweetness, soft voice, and you fall for it, right? And then what happened? They come against you, they destroy you, they kill you, right? They assess all kind of things, and then they glorify it. The Lord talk about it. The Lord said people like that, they will, because they feel they have power over you. They never have remorse of what they have done to you. They don't feel whether you are right. In fact, they will justify it as something that they did good, as the good thing, as the best thing. What do we see? Have we not seen people saying slavery was good? Have we not seen all the horrible things they have done on the African continent? They say it was good. Let's see this. Let's see this. Listen to this. Whose possessor? Whose possessor? That means somebody that possess you, right? Somebody like feel that they own you. Now, whose possessor slay them, kill, beat, torture, and hold themselves not guilty. Isn't that what they do? Have America ever hold herself guilty? When they killed Gaddafi, what happened? Hillary Clinton sat down here. She said, we saw, we killed. They were happy. They never hold themselves guilty. Who have ever taken America to the International Criminal Court or to the ICC? No one, because they justify what they do. They never hold themselves guilty, but they hold the oppressed guilty. And that is what the book is telling us. They hold the oppressed guilty. Who possessor slay them and hold themselves not guilty. They don't hold themselves guilty. They justify what they do as right. Be careful. And then he said, hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord. They that sell them say, blessed be the Lord. How did Thanksgiving then come? That's how Thanksgiving came. Because Thanksgiving is not in here that you have to celebrate Thanksgiving. No. When it's so African, they make millions, billions of dollars out of African people. They start having Thanksgiving. They were happy. And that is why it's saying here. And they that sell them say, blessed. They say they are blessed. They that sell them say, blessed be to the Lord. For I am rich. You see it? They exploit you. And they say, blessed be to the Lord that I am rich. They dehumanize you. They say, blessed be to the Lord, I am rich. They are rich. You've been demise on your demise. You see that, right? And then they said, for I am rich, and their own shepherd pity them not. Their own shepherd pity them not. Now we are the shepherd. Because anytime they call us, we run it coming. We are the shepherd. Their own shepherd pity them not. We don't pity them for what they do against us. We don't pity them for them killing our African leaders, for them killing our democratic leader, our visionary leader. We don't pity them. I mean, we pity them. We don't say, oh, that a big judge. We don't carry them to the RCC. We have never talked about carrying them to the RCC because we pity them. Their shepherd pity them. You don't see them talking about, hey, carry them to the RCC. We praise them. We take them to be the savior. So you see that, right? You see that. Now, for those of you or people that like to say black people like shouting, let me prove this to you. It is a gift that was given to us. It is a gift because the Most High himself, he needs to shout. The Most High himself was not a slow talker. Let's go to the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation means what? To reveal, to uncover. It means truth. It means to bring to light. It means identity, to give an identity. The book of Revelation. Let's go there and see. Let's go to the book of Revelation and see. Now, the book of Revelation, right? The revealing of Christ, the revealing of the Most High, right? Let's see this. We're going to go to 15 and see whether Jesus Christ was a slow talker or the Most High was a slow talker or he was somebody like shouted over his head. Let's see this. So just because some white guy came talking slow or this, that, and then you feel that Christ like, no, that's not Christ-like. The Bible says people like that, they are deceiving people. They are devil. They are demon. Be careful with them. They're slow talker. Their words are smoother than butter, but war is in their heart. Their words are smoother than oil, but sword is in their hands. Let's see. That reveal who Christ was, the Most High was. Let's reveal it. We're going to go to 15. 15. And his feet like unto fine brass. I know we discussed that. And if they're burned in a furnace, and his and if they're burned in a furnace, that means in fact it was black, right? So they are telling you Christ was black. Now, but that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on his voice, right? How he should shout. So let's see this. All right, let's go to 15. All right, and his voice. Now look at his voice. And his voice as the sound of many water, water, and his voice as the sound, sound, as the sound of many water. Now, does that sound like somebody who now used to shout? If you go to a river fall, you go to a river fall, right? A waterfall, let's say. What do you hear when you by the waterfall? You hear a lot of noise. You hear the waterfall, woo, like what? Going. You hear anything but a waterfall and be like, oh, waterfall is in here. So that's why it's telling you, just one. It's telling you his voice was like what? Sound like a many waterfall. So he was loud. He was loud. He was not a man who spoke softly. That is why Jesus. That is why God for them. But the Most High, he was lousy, like waterfall. He never spoke softly. That is why Jesus. That's how Satan comes. Satan speaks softly, nicely, smile. The Most High was not like that. He was lousy. You'll be far and you hear the noise of the Most High. He was a lousy man. So it is a gift. When you see the black man speaking, they say he's lousy. He's shouting. No. It's a gift from your forefather passed down unto you. Now, how was it passed down unto us? I'm going to show you it again. Let's get to the next Bible verse here. How it was passed down unto us. Let's see here. Let's see here. We're going to get it. All right? Let's see this. Let's see Isaiah 58. Let's see how it was passed down to us and what the Lord told us what to do, what the Most High told us what to do. Okay? Let's see here. Let's see here. All right. Isaiah 58. Let's see here how it was passed down unto us. Don't let nobody lie to you or you shouting, you this. No. The Lord himself shouted. He was not a soft man. You will be fine and hear the Lord. You hear the Most High. So he passed it on to us. So what did the Most High say? Cry loud. Speak loudly. He said, cry loud. Spare not. Spare not. That means don't back off. Okay? Hold on 1 minute. Yeah, cry loud, speak loudly until people can hear. And he said, do not hold back. Spare not me, don't hold back. Don't be ashamed to speak loudly because people will tell you, you black people speak loud. You black people are lousy. It is a gift. It is a gift because the Most High himself was lousy. He said, cry loud. Tell them. Let them hear it. Spare not. Don't hold back. Don't be afraid. Lift up that voice like a trumpet and show my people their transgression. Show my people their transgression. And that is what we're doing. The transgression. We don't believe in ourselves. We keep breaking our law. We don't see what the Most High have given to us. We have not recognized what the Most High have given to us. The Most High make us special people. But yet instead, we take the narrative of the oppressor, the third world continent, and we agree to it. The Most High is telling us, speak aloud to my people that they hear because of their transgression, because they don't believe in what I have done for them. I make them a blessed continent. I make them a blessed people. I give them everything. But yet they stay. They run to their enemies. They listen to their enemies. They don't see themselves. Speak aloud. So the Most High was not a man that spoke softly. No. He was a man of fire. That is why in the same Revelation, when you check it in, they say his eye was as red. Only black man eye can be red. When he's speaking, only the black man, when the black man speaking, you see his eye red. When it's serious, you see his eyes red. That's why the Most High says, speak aloud. Do not spare it. Do not hold back. Speak like a trumpet. So be careful. Just because somebody came to you smiling, talking nice, softly, and then another person come shouting, telling you things, and then you feel the person that's speaking smiling with you, nice with you, mean that that's the right person. You'll be taking the wrong road and you live in the right road. And that is what have happened to black people. And then you will even hear some of our brothers criticizing other brothers. You speak too loud. You shouting. Why are you shouting? That's how the Most High said we should. And that is our identity. Because the Most High himself was lousy. I just show you. Let's continue here to the next page. Now, let's see some of these things here. What we mean, what the Most High said, right? Now I'm going to show you video of some of these things. Okay? Now, let's see here. Some of the pretender that we have to be careful just because somebody spoke softly to us. Let me show you something here. Hopefully it's this. Okay. No, not this. Okay. Oh, this right here. Let me show you something here. Okay. Let me mute myself. Let me mute myself. Let me show you what these people are up to. All right. What they have said. All right. And that is why we are not going to listen to the US-Afrika summit. We are not going to listen to Joe Biden when he said he wants for Africa to be part of the G20. They have an alternative motive, not in the favor of African people, but in their favor. Let's watch this and see.
Sub-Saharan Africa has been fundamental to the global prosperity of the advanced countries. And Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow Sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep Sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. Okay, so that's the message. It doesn't mean to say that there's nothing Africans can do. Of course there is. This is what it's about. Because if Africa does do something different, I assure you living standards of all those in Europe and North America and Asia is going to fall. Okay? And that is a big price to pay. I assure you that the West is not going to allow that without a big fight. Okay, so the job of many Western academics is to convince Africans they have to keep doing what they're doing. Okay, and to show them it's your fault that you're poor. It's not our fault. It's your fault that you're poor. You know, so this is what we do in academic institutions. We know the basic forces that have caused this underdevelopment. We know it's colonization. We cannot afford to allow Africa to industrialize and start producing manufacturers. Okay, so we will do everything to stop that. And I'm going to show you how we actually block that. We had East Asian rapid industrialization processes. So in the earlier period, we had Japan and Korea and Taiwan. Okay, rapid growth, sucking in raw materials from Africa, driving up the prices. And after those countries finished industrialization, then sub-Saharan African growth rate again fell. Sub-Saharan Africa is condemned to this role, just the supplier of raw materials, not a manufacturer. The currencies are collapsing of these countries, and many of them are sub-Saharan African countries. After colonization ended, we needed new structures to keep these countries where they were. Okay? And the first of those is aid. Okay, we give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power. That's all. All the hypocrisy about transparency and democracy and bullshit like that, it's all bullshit. But it would go to country after country offering loans. And if the president did not accept the loan, they were killed. It's just economics. It's economic warfare. The rich declare war on the poor. It happens everywhere. It happens in a country. The rich control the government. Of course they do. You really believe you have democracy? Come on. You know, I mean, grow up. Who has all the subsidies and income support? US, Europe. The largest budgets in the world for supporting their farmers are Europe and US. You see, we're keeping them dependent. We're keeping them on a string. This next round of the WTO is designed to block that. To block anyone else getting on top of the ladder.
So, you heard what it said here. There's no way they're going to allow Africa to rise. So they'll always have their strategy put in place, right? And that is what exactly we see here. And he said something, for each time they want to do something, any African leader that say no, they kill him. That's what he said. It's not coming from anybody's mouth, right? Any African leaders that want to go contrary to the American policy, to the EU policy of controlling Africa and getting African resources, right? Any African leader that want to go contrary to their policy that we don't want America or EU controlling, or we want for Africa to rise, they go to kill you. Now, he said when colonization was finishing, right, what did they do? They put policies in place. Now, in this current time again, right, another policy that they're coming with is for Africa to be part of the G20, right? It's not in our interest. It's not in African people's interest. African people being part of the G20, why are you going to cause us? It's going to cause us more damage. It's just like NATO. There are many nations in NATO, right? But all these nations are in NATO. What voice do they have? What power do they have over the United States? What power do they have over Great Britain? None. So Africa being part of the G20, what power Africa have? It's just to, how they call it, to take the African votes, to put it in favor of America votes. So anything America says she won or EU won, that's why they will go back, because Africa will not stay on her own or be extinct, right? Because Africa will not betray the court. The court is a court society. Africa will not betray them. Africa will absolutely have to vote. Whether she like it or not, you have to go and vote by what America said or what America want. So Africa, African leaders, that's not something you should focus on. To be part of the G20 is not in our favor. All right? Now, Joe Biden even talking about the one for the Africa to be part of the United Nations to have a permanent seat. Look, if they are the one advocating for it now, we should understand it's not in our favor. When we were advocating to be part of the United Nations to have a permanent seat, they kept voting against it. While this time around, they are pushing it that we should be part. It's all because they have realized that the potential of Africa is powerful. Because they have realized that it came a time, once upon a time, they wanted for Africa to vote against or to go against Russia, right? Not to have any tie with Russia. And Africa did not do it, right? And that did not have any effect on Russia, because the sanction on Russia was to strangle Russia. But because Africa said no, it never had any effect on Russia. In fact, Russia is the one surviving, and those European countries are the one dying. Okay? America even herself is the one feeding it. But they're not going to tell their citizens that the sanction upon Russia, America herself feeding it. They're not going to tell them. Okay? So only Africa can free everybody. Only Africa can feed everybody. Only Africa can feed America, can feed Europe. They have recognized that. So how can they do that? Instead of African people taking the lead, instead of African people taking the lead to be recognized, all right, instead of African people taking the lead to look down on America and say, yes, now we are the one on top, we can feed you, we can do this. Instead of African people telling America or EU, we're the one doing this and letting our citizens to know, instead of telling history around, let's just put it that way. Instead of telling history around, they don't want it. They want to come in as investors. They want to come in to lie to us, to feel that everything is okay. Then we be part of them. And then at the end of the day, they still have the financial strength that we don't have. And because of that financial strength, they're going to catch up and hold up, and they will take control over us. And then leave us again. And that is what we don't want. African leaders, we are telling you, we don't want to go the easy way. It's better we go the hard way and come out. We've been going through the hard way through slavery, through colonization. We have gone through the hard way, and we have always freed ourselves. It was not a white man that freed the black man from slavery. It was not a white man that freed the African continent from colonization. It was African people. It has been hard. We have come far. That we're going to allow these people again to come and take no. Let us move forward. We cannot allow them to come back. Let us move forward. Let us look down on them too. Let us tell them how powerful we are too. Let us tell them the importance of African people. We are not any kind of shithole country or shithole continent. Let us tell them we are not any insignificant people. African leader, tell these people you can lead. You are leaders. Do not let them call you names. Because if you fall to it, tomorrow, these are the same people, you African leader, that will come and be calling you names. Do not allow these people to corrupt you. And then tomorrow, they will come and write their book and say African leaders are corrupt. It is because you listen to these people, you sign agreement with these people that are not, and they said they know they cannot sign agreement with you in that manner if it were them. And then after you agree to them, and then tomorrow they come back, and then they write book, they say you corrupt. And then tomorrow they come back and say that in interview, they say your nation corrupt, your president corrupt. Because you agree to them. Do not let them to be calling you names. It's over. It's over. Let's look here. That's how these people feel. They always have hidden agenda. Let's see another one here again. Okay, let's see what Paul Kagame said here. Okay, let's see what Paul Kagame said here. Now, these are some of the reasons they are against Paul Kagame, and they are pointing fingers at him. And that's why I said, if we have ever had negative thing about Paul Kagame, we can use Paul Kagame to get the other African leaders. If we ever wanted to go against him, this is not the time. Because if we go against him, we will be fighting the battles of the enemies. Let's see this.
African leaders, we don't need to be invited anywhere to go and address our problems without first inviting ourselves to come together to tell each other the actual truth that we must tell each other about our serious problems. For me, when I'm watching on television and I find our leaders who should have been working together all along to address these problems that commonly affect their countries, wait until they are invited to go to Europe to sit there and just, it's like they are made to sit down and address their problems. Why does anybody wait for that? What image does it even give about us, about Africa? In fact, the image it gives is that we are not there to even address these problems. We are there for a photo opportunity. We are happy to sit there in Paris with the president of France and address and just talk about addressing problems. It doesn't make sense that our leaders cannot get themselves together to address problems affecting our people. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so Obi said Kagame regime still get billions of dollars in aid to the West to be the local army of the West or not. So he's asking question, right? Now, you're right. Paul Paul Kagame was once a puppet. Okay? But being a puppet, it doesn't mean you can't come from out of being a puppet. Paul Kagame has realized it. And if you notice, this 2022 US-Afrika Summit, right? I read certain part in the article, they said one African leader mocked, okay, the summit. It was Paul Kagame that mocked the summit. Now, Paul Kagame said the 2014 US-Afrika Summit was just another good one, but it was not fruitful. He was the one, he said it in a meeting. It was never fruitful. Okay? The promises America made, they never lived up to it. It was Paul Kagame that said it. Now, he was once a puppet, right? Now, let us ask ourselves a question again. Why is this time the United States is pointing fingers at Paul Kagame that he support M23 rebel? Why? It's because they have seen Paul Kagame have make a U-turn. They are saying that this man, he's no longer acting like a slave. They are saying that this man, he's not a field Negro instead of horse Negro. He's no longer a horse Negro. He has become a field Negro. Okay? So, America too going to throw a game in there. But because they feed the African people, we've been having doubt about Kagame. So if they come out to say something, I'm still muted. Miss Life say I am muted. I just unmute myself. Can you hear me? Or if you can hear me, say yes, you can hear me. Okay, very good. Yeah, so it's a mind game too, because they know that we already have problem with Paul Kagame. So we just want to hear something negative about him so we can bash him, right? So it's a mind game again. So the United States going to come out to show light out there like, okay, Paul Kagame support M23 rebel. Okay, and which of course they have come out to say it. And then the United Nations too came out to say it, that Paul Kagame support the M23 rebel, right? Now, if we fall for that again, that is to say we are fighting the battles of the enemies. That is why I said if we have had anything negative about Paul Kagame, we should hold it back. Let us hold it back. Let Paul Kagame be focused, right? Because it is our time to use him now. Let us use him. He was used by the enemies. It is our time to use him, right? Being focused to get African leaders, to bring light to what we are saying, because he's a leader out there. At least he's one of the African leaders out there now that is being vocal, that is saying. So we have somebody out there. We can use him to be focused, all right? To bring other African leaders on his side, to bring light, to bring the thing that we are discussing. So this is not a time to throw him under the bus or to go against him. No, it will not be good for us, but it will be good for the imperialists. Because they are saying that this man is not being vocal. Instead of him being a horse Negro, he's not turned to field Negro. He's on the field now, preaching. He want to be free now. He's not identifying with his people. He's not identifying the problem of his people. He's not pointing fingers to the West that, oh, there's no need coming to Europe for meeting or to America. We can stay on the African continent and have our meeting and solve the African problem. And he was the man, the only man in the African UN Leadership Summit 2022 that point out that this is just another meeting, just like the 2014 meeting, because it was never fruitful. It was just a good meeting. We all came and we all have it. And mind you, people may say, why did he come, right? You also have to understand, he already know that they are already looking at him. So if he start drawing back just like that, they will know that automatically they will find a way to get him. So he have to come. He have to come and show light too. Like, okay, he just been part. But let's see what he's doing, his attitude, his like some of the things that he's doing. Okay, so he's also playing the mind game. That is what he's doing as well. So he's turned around. He's not horse Negro again. He's now becoming field Negro. So we can use him as a leader out there, as a president out there. We can use him to get what we want, because they use him to get what they want. It is our time to use him. We should not bash him. We should use him. Let us play the game as well. Okay, now let's look at the last video here. I'm gonna play one other video quick, and then I'm gonna play a video from Dr. Arikina. That will be the last video. But I want to play a video here. He's a comedian, but the way in which he put it, I want you to see. I may not play the entire video because we got to go, but I will play half of it. Right? It's regarding Libya and Gaddafi. So he's a comedian, but he's speaking truth, and that is just to tell us that it is time that we do away with this colonial mentality. It is time that, look, it is time that we tell America enough is enough. It's time that we move in. It's time to tell Europe, and, you know, nothing wrong with them telling them we're moving on. It's enough. So let's see this comedian here. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but let's just see something here.
Listen, today I want to talk about Africa. Yes, I am back again to talk about Africa. But to be specific, I want to talk about Libya. You see, if there's one thing that they don't want you to know, or the story that they don't want to hear, is the story of how Libya became heaven on earth. They don't want you to know that story. I mean, for what for? For who? But guess what? I am here to remind you how Libya became heaven on earth. And I know they will not like this video, but hey, listen, I am African. What can I do? Yeah, I need to talk about this. People need to know the story of what Libya was during the time of Muammar Gaddafi. A leader that wanted a one Africa. A man who loved his country, who died for his country. And a man who wanted the whole entire Africa to be like his country. And they took him away from us, because they knew that Muammar Gaddafi was a force to reckon with. Force to reckon with. That is English. Yeah, I'm telling you, I mean, for who? A man who was taken away from Africa too soon. A man who was called a dictator when he was not a dictator. Listen, you see, while the Western world painted this man a terrorist or a dictator, deep down in their hearts, Muammar Gaddafi was the name that they feared the most. I'm telling you, I mean, for who? They feared this name just by the mention of the name. They were shaking because they knew the abilities that Muammar Gaddafi had. Yes, it's true. I mean, for who? Eh? Even now, when they hear the name, they shake. Yeah. Wait, I'll remind you the reason why that man was turned against his own people. I'll remind you. Number one, do you know that in Libya, it was the only country without debt? Do you know that Libya was the only country that had people of Libya own flats, all of them? No one was homeless. I mean, for what for? For who? Did you know that the people of Libya were the only people that could get loans at 0 interest rate? Huh? How? I mean, for who? Eh? Did you know that in Libya, there was nothing like electricity bill? Electricity was free in Libya. Hold on, I'm still going. I mean, for who? I have more information for you. I have more information. Did you know? Short commercial break. Have you registered with OneXBet? If not, now is the time to register with OneXBet. Especially with the World Cup going on, you can register with info. Register today and be vowed to make sure each and every citizen of Libya had a house and put his parents last. He said, my parents will be the last ones to own a home. Tell me which African leader right now can put their parents last to receive a house in an African nation. Tell me which one. You feel it, huh? Can your president put their parents last to receive a house? But Gaddafi made sure each and every citizen of Libya had a house. And the parents were last to have a house. He had vowed. I mean, for what for? For who? I'm still going on. Listen, the interesting one. Did you know that in Libya, all the newlyweds were gifted $50,000 to buy their new house? The newlyweds, you people that are getting married, you people that are couples, you newlyweds, you people that are having weddings. Imagine having a wedding, and after a wedding, they give you a $50,000 to buy your new home. That's how the people of Libya lived the time that Muammar Gaddafi was still alive. I want you to sit down and just think critically for a moment. Think critically for a moment. I'm still going on. Did you know that in Libya, education and treatment, health facilities, they were free? If the Libyan citizens did not manage to find any medical facilities or medical treatment within Libya, the government would automatically fund that citizen to go out abroad to seek treatment. Not with their money, no. Oh, that is an African country. Libya for a moment was like a dream for some of us. I mean, for who? It became heaven on earth. Listen, one more. Did you know that in Libya was the only place where someone after graduation, they failed to find employment? The government would pay that person the average salary of the profession as if one was already in employment. Just paying them. In short, they were paying you for graduating. While waiting for employment, they were paying you for waiting for employment. Which African country right now would do that for you? I think now I understand why that man was taken away from us. I'm telling you, I mean, for who? Wait, I have more. You understand why that man was taken away from us. Listen to this one. This one, I don't think there's any African country that can even do this. Listen, did you know that in Libya, a portion of Libyan oil sale was credited to the bank accounts of every Libyan citizen? Which country? You in your country, the minerals that they are digging and whatever mineral, natural resources they are digging in there, do you even get a share, you? Who would give you a share? You tell me. Some of you have never even seen any benefit from those natural resources up to date. Our friends in Libya, when Muammar Gaddafi was alive, they would get a portion of every Libyan oil sale credited into their bank accounts. Did you know that in Libya, any Libyan taking up farming as a career was given free land, free farming equipment, and was also given free livestock to kickstart their career for free? In Libya, only in Libya. Did you know that? Who would give you farmland this time? Even your own land, your birthright, they are giving someone else, not you. Yeah, I'm telling you, I mean, for who? This is the truth, I'm telling you. That was what was happening. That was what was happening in Libya. I know right now there's nothing we can do to bring back Muammar Gaddafi. But believe me, you, African leaders, go back to the policies of Muammar Gaddafi. Go back to them. Do not sleep on them. I mean, for what? For who? I know most African leaders don't even want to hear about the policies that Muammar Gaddafi had. They don't want to hear it because they're scared. I know you will say, no, this chap is just talking. He doesn't know what he's talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about. And the fact is that I know that you are scared as a leader. You don't want to end up like Muammar Gaddafi. That's why some of you are far from being leaders. Some of you are just fortunate that you are in those seats because you're not willing to go that far for your people. You're not willing to go that far for your African continent. Yes. I mean, for who? Very sad indeed. I mean, for who? Please, each and every one of you who is seeing this video, you have a task. Remind your African leaders of what Muammar Gaddafi had made Libya to be like. Remind them. Mention their name in this video. Believe me, you, they can take away one, but they cannot take away all of you. I mean, for who? I'm telling you. The policies of Muammar Gaddafi, African leaders, please do not sleep on them. I beg you. Find out how the Libyans were living during Muammar Gaddafi's reign or rule. Go and find out. I mean, for who? The problem is that you like watching porn. I'm sorry about that one. I went off. But yeah, go and research. No one is ever going to talk about it. No one is ever going to remind you that Libya was heaven on earth. They will never remind you. And to Muammar Gaddafi, may your soul rest in peace. You great son of Africa. Thank you so much.
All right, so that was Gaddafi. That was a comedian, but very passionate, very serious, very eloquent, and very truthful in his statement. All right, and very, very analytical in his analysis, as he said. Now, that is just another reminder again to the African leaders. Just because you are seeing America or Europe trying to humble themselves, do not fall for it. That's how they made Barack Obama to humble himself with Gaddafi. And Gaddafi at the end saw to it that, oh, that's my brother. My brother have now become president of a white country. And he was so happy. And this same brother of his lied to him to the extent that Libya take over her nuclear arsenal because a horse Negro like Obama was Young's or his own brother. And after that, this horse Negro went and killed his own brother. And then later he came and said one of the mistakes he ever did as a president was to kill Gaddafi. But on the other hand, Hillary Clinton was there saying we went, we saw, and we conquered, and she was happy. That is to tell you, African leaders, you coming from African Summit or World Summit or a US-Afrika Summit, and they are telling you we want for Africa to be part of the G20. Don't fall for it. It is a trap. This is how we are judging the United States. We're looking at past experiences. We're looking at agenda or agreement that we have had with her, and she betrayed us. We do not want for Africa to be betrayed again, henceforth going forward. Please do not fall for the American, how they call it, or tricks. Do not fall for Biden trick to say, oh, America original sin. If Biden serious, it was stuck for America here. She will solve the problem of the sin here with the children of Africa that live here. So don't fall for it. It's a trap. It's a devil speaking. It's a demon speaking. Don't fall for it. The enemies come in various ways. Do not fall for all the programs. This time around, they're going to come with a lot of programs because they know this time we are in need. It is a very critical time. They're going to come out with a lot of programs. Do not fall for those programs. The enemies come in various ways. Don't fall for it. Let's look at what Dr. Arukina said, and we will stop there for the day. What she said about the African Leadership Summit.
Hi, I'm Steve Clemens, and I have a question. Can President Biden convince African leaders that America is a better partner than China? Let's get to the bottom line. This week, the White House hosts leaders from 49 African countries to try and convince them that their continent is a real priority for America. It's going to be a hard sell, since many Africans feel that Washington has treated them with a lot of benign neglect, more of a problem than an opportunity. A place that's full of precious minerals that we want, like lithium and cobalt, which America needs for its electric cars, but also a place loaded with security concerns and humanitarian crises and corruption. Meanwhile, Russia's kind of zoomed to the top as Africa's #1 weapons dealer, and China's trade with African countries has reached a record $261 billion last year. That's about 5 times more than the U.S. An African youth survey by Ichikovitz Family Foundation found that 77% of youth across the continent identified China as the most important nation for Africa's future, not the United States. Plus, China deals with whatever government is in place, no questions asked, while the U.S. cherry picks its allies and offers lectures about democracy. So can the US-Africa Leaders Summit here in Washington, D.C. turn things around? And what can America offer that Africa really wants? Today, we're talking with Arikana Chihombori Kwao, the former ambassador of the African Union to the United States. She's also the founder of the Africa Diaspora Development Initiative, which aims to link Africans abroad back to the continent. Ambassador, it's such a pleasure to talk with you today. This big summit is going on right now in Washington, D.C. You're in Zimbabwe. I guess I want to start by asking you, what do the leaders of Africa and President Biden have to get right after this week that you think is essential?
Thank you for having me. This is a very important summit. It's a conversation between the continent and the United States, a conversation that is desperately needed, particularly at this time in our history and in our life. The United States, let me start by saying, it still remains the most preferred trading partner for the African nations. However, like I used to tell the State Department and any engagements that we've had with the United States, I felt during my tenure that the United States was slowly losing ground, and they were risking losing their position as Africa's preferred trading partner. So this is a very important meeting that I hope that if the United States, like I used to tell my colleagues, I felt that the United States, if this was a basketball game, the United States needed to call for timeout. For US needed to realize that this is a new game and it required new rules of engagement. Therefore, a need for the United States to re-strategize. I'm hoping that for a change, this meeting, the United States can begin to realize it's no longer business as usual. It's no longer a case of the United States saying, we make policy and we tell the Africans. That has got to change. It is a recipe for disaster. It is a recipe for the United States seeing itself losing its place as Africa's preferred trading partner. That's what makes this meeting very important. And I'm hoping that the US can call for timeout and understand that engaging Africa at this time, it is a new game that is calling for new rules of engagement. And therefore it is time to re-strategize and treat the Africans fairly, treat the Africans respectfully, and treat the Africans as equal partners.
You know, Ambassador, I think one of the things that I'm trying to be sensitive to is that we often over in the United States, as you know, and you were the ambassador of the African Union, tend to talk about a continent as opposed to individual countries and nations, of which there are 54. There are 49 heads of state here in Washington this week. And are we making a mistake? Is our ignorance on our side, from your impression of our ignorance, you know, amplified by us talking about Africa so much as opposed to talking about Rwanda, Zimbabwe, Ghana? Should we be, is our illiteracy in this level so obvious that it's a real problem? And do these kinds of summits that bring everyone together do a disservice to that kind of getting to know each country more distinctly?
I think for the United States, and I'll repeat it, and I used to repeat it all the time during my tenure, what really is behind the failure of effective engagement with Africa is the disrespect of the Africans. That's where the problem begins. If we cannot accept, if the United States cannot accept Africans as equal partners, if the United States, for example, let's look at this particular meeting, this particular summit. There was no defined agenda. There has never been defined agendas whenever they meet with African countries as individual countries. It's always the United States setting the agenda. the United States setting the policies and the United States telling the Africans about the policies. That is no way to have any meaningful engagement. If you take, for example, the FOCAC meeting that was held between China and the African heads of state, way in advance, the issues were clearly defined. The agenda was going to focus on trade, it was going to focus on aid, it was going to focus on investments. The African heads of states were engaged in the discussion, in the planning. The outcomes were clearly defined with a way forward in terms of follow-up. It was a fruitful meeting that addressed the issues that needed to be addressed between not only African countries individually with China, but also Africans collectively with China. There is no published agenda. There are no issues that have been presented to the African heads of states. Africans have not been asked to engage in terms of creating the agenda and making sure that when the African heads of states come to Washington, the outcomes, the issues to be discussed are going to be meaningful outcomes with follow-up and deliverables that are going to be beneficial to both. It remains a one-sided conversation with the United States telling the Africans the agendas and the policies. The Africans are not on the table to discuss issues pertaining to us, wherein lies the problem. And the reason that continues to be the case, what underscores that is the disrespect for Africans. I repeated it, I complained about it repeatedly. It is a serious problem. The United States must understand that Africans are not going to take it anymore. If you don't treat the Africans fairly, the United States is going to see itself slowly losing ground to China, to Russia, to all other nations, because without respecting the Africans, without treating the Africans as equal, without understanding that exploitation and abuse of Africa simply cannot continue, this meeting, this summit, is going to be yet another gathering with no outcomes, no deliverables until the next summit. I'm sorry, but the disrespect of the Africans is at the bottom of it all. Agenda for this meeting should have been set out in advance. Africans should have been involved. Without the involvement of the Africans in these discussions, this is a useless meeting. I'm sorry, but that is a fact.
No, I am very grateful for your candor. And it sounds to me, I mean, I think there was a lot of criticism of the last summit like this under President Obama, that there was like no follow through. And, you know, it's one of the big questions I'm asking is, how do you make a big bang summit where everyone comes over? It's like checking off the box and say, okay, we've done Africa, now we can move on to other things. How do you make that something that's a more sustainable and a more continuous engagement of the United States with Africa? And what I'm hearing from you is frankly a lot of disappointment and you know, a lot of pessimism about what may come out of this summit.
Well, the point of the matter is already, you know, nothing is going to come out of it because it is a one-sided conversation.
Right.
Where is the agenda? The agenda should have been published way in advance. The African leaders should have been given an opportunity to also state their position so they can come up with an African position that can then be discussed alongside the American position. So the fact that it is a one-sided conversation, that is yet going to be another useless meeting with no outcomes. But again, I'm going to keep emphasizing the reason this is happening is because there is a disrespect for the Africans. There is a general feeling that we don't need to hear from the Africans. Their opinions do not matter. That wherein lies the problem. Why were the Africans not consulted? Why were the Africans not part of an agenda? Why was there not even an agenda like what happened during the FOCAC meeting with China? Those are some basic issues. No head of state. President Biden would not pick up and go to meet with any other leader in the world without an agenda. That simply doesn't happen.
Right.
So what makes the US think that they can engage African leaders without an agenda? Come to Washington, let me tell you what I want to do for you. Come to Washington, let me tell you what you need to do in your countries. That game is an old game.
Right.
It's not going to work anymore. To be honest with you, if I'm to speak the truth, I hope a lot of heads of states don't come because it is an insult. It is an abuse of the African leaders. It's a disrespect of the African leaders. Where is the agenda? Please respect the African leaders. Do unto them what you would want done unto you.
So
it's really a simple ask.
let me ask you a question. You mentioned China and how China approaches this. I'm interested in what China gets so right. But is there a blind spot there? Are there problems in the China-Africa relationship from your perspective?
Let me also just hit the nail in the head and deal with the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
Racism as well plays a very important part. The disrespect of the Africans also goes back to a lot of the people who work in the US government, not all of them, but there's a significant of them who automatically assume that Africans do not know what they're doing. Africans need help. Africans need to be told what to do. And racism is also at the bottom of it all. We need to address the individuals who are going to be visiting Africa, engaging Africa. They must understand that Africans are equal to them. But when one goes to Africa with a sense of superiority, wherein lies the problem, because you are not going to engage those leaders who are going to come to the table as equals. You go in feeling superior, you come back feeling superior. That is not an issue with the Chinese. The Chinese are coming in. The Chinese, yes, if you don't negotiate with them and they win the game, then that's your fault. But they don't come in feeling superior. They understand that Africa has something they need. So they will come to the Africans. They will come and make sure that they let the Africans know that you matter to us, that our relationship with you does matter. That you don't get that feeling with the United States. You get the feeling that there's this sense of superiority, that you Africans, you ought to be glad that we are engaging you. You ought to be glad that we're inviting you to come to Washington. That sense of superiority, it has to change. Whether it calls for the United States to retrain their people as they engage Africa, but it is that which really goes to the bottom of why the engagements are not going to be as effective. They must take a page out of what Africa is doing. Let me say this. Chinese people didn't used to be that way, but they quickly changed their strategy. When they realized that the game they were playing was not going to work in Africa, they changed their strategy. And that's why, like I said it during my tenure, I'll continue to say it again. If this was a basketball game, the United States need to call for timeout. This is a new game, and it requires new rules of engagement. The United States must, first and foremost, make sure that racism is out of the picture. Africans are just as smart as anybody else. Africans are equal. And until we engage as equals, all these meetings, all these conversations are always going to be useless. And it goes back to the individuals who are going to be at the table with the Africans. So the US also need to address the issue of racism and make sure that the people engaging Africa, their minds are clear and they accept that Africans are equal.
Tell us about Pan-Africanism. Tell us about what Africa, the states in Africa are doing to trade, to connect, to move their agenda forward proactively, no matter what the rest of the world is thinking about it.
Absolutely. I have to say, if you were to go back to 1963, when our Pan-African fathers came together in the hopes of creating an Africa that spoke with one voice, an Africa that had one military, an Africa that had one central bank, one monetary fund, one stock exchange, and an Africa with one customs union. We failed at that over the years, but finally, 2 years ago, they approved the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is a policy that saw Africa coming together in one particular area, that we are now speaking with one voice when it comes to trade. Yes, its implementation is a monster. Yes, its implementation is work in progress, but you can say of the issues that our Pan-African fathers met to discuss in 1963, finally, over 50 years later, we are able to accomplish the first one, which is being an Africa that's going to the world as one customs union. The spirit of Pan-Africanism, it has taken us a long time to really begin to come together. to dismantle the Berlin Conference, which of course, for those who think, oh, Berlin Conference is a thing of the past, think again. As long as we have a country called Togo, as long as we have a country called Congo Brazzaville, Eswatini, Malawi, those small countries, even Nigeria or the big ones, Kenya, Egypt, Morocco, they cannot survive on their own. As long as we're talking about the little bitty individual African countries, we are never going to realize the dream of a united Africa that speaks with one voice. And until we dismantle some of those borders, until we begin to wake ourselves up as a people, until we begin to realize that the colonizers and the rule of divide and conquer left us feeling inferior. Supremacy, white supremacy was introduced from the very onset when the colonizers came to Africa. We were taught to believe that everything African was bad, everything European was better. And we still continue to suffer from that mentality. So yes, while we demand that the West and those who don't look like us Africans treat us equally, realize that we are human beings just like they are, we too as Africans, we have a lot of work to do on a personal level, where we must also believe, truly believe, that we are equal to everybody else on earth, and that we are capable. That also is a disease that we need to realize as Africans. Let's wake up and realize that white people are not superior to us. Chinese are not superior to us. We are just as good as anybody else. That is a serious challenge because we still have people, even when you look at issues that we could stand up as a people and push back. You see ministers from the Western world going to Africa, and they basically can, I've seen them say some of the most ridiculous things to the Africans. And
Right.
instead of the Africans pushing back and saying, hey, hold it, this is not going to fly. Instead, the Africans are afraid, just inherently fear of the white person for no good reason whatsoever, except that we have been programmed to feel inferior. So on an individual basis, we continue to speak the gospel of truth. We continue to shed the light as to the brainwashing that the African has been put through, wherein lies the problem. When you look at what is being done at the World Bank, for example, the Bretton Woods institutions, the frivolous loans, countries that have never defaulted on their loan repayments, and
Right.
yet they're still given large interest rates. Why? Countries like the United States that don't need any help,
Right.
they get loans at 0 interest rates. You look at the issue. I'm glad President Biden, I hear he's going to be talking about having the AU as the 51st member of the G20. Well, let's also take it to the next level. Let's go to the United Nations. Let's have Africa, 1.4
Right.
billion people. They need to come to the table. Let's African Union be the 6th member of the 5-member UN Security Council. You can't just totally disregard 1.4 billion people because you've gotten away with it for centuries. Well, guess what? Game is over. Africans are waking up. Africans are beginning to realize and understand the game that have been played. Unfortunately, we don't have that critical mass of people who are continuously going to speak truth to power.
Right.
The good thing with the story of Africa is ours, we are coming from a position of righteousness,
Right.
a position of truth, a position of facts.
Right.
Those are constants, they don't change. Let's continue to give the world an overdose of our truth, but at the same time, while we are doing so and demanding a world that is fair, that is just, and free of
Right.
racism, bigotry, and hate, we must also work on our own development and our own awakening as a people.
Talk to me a little bit about how Africa can take advantage of its intellectual connection and assets to entrepreneurs who have left, but may want to help Africa back, because this is one of your major initiatives.
Absolutely. The brain drain that started over 400 years ago, when the best and the brightest and the fittest were taken out of Africa forcibly, and that is when the brain drain started. I want to make sure that is very clear. And when we talk about African diaspora, we're talking about all people of African descent living outside of Africa. Let's be very clear. African Americans, they are Africans who were forcibly taken out of Africa, plus the continued brain drain, those who are later immigrants who left Africa running away from famine, from wars, in search of greener pastures. The end result is, as we speak, Africa has a serious deficit of expertise.
Right.
However, The good news for Africa is that we have a very young, intelligent, vibrant population that need opportunities. So when we can marry the age group of young, intelligent Africans with the expertise coming from the diaspora, we can see an Africa that can propel itself to take its rightful place on the world stage like it once was. So yes, the diaspora are an important component of Africa's development. Make no mistake about that. All the African leaders are fully aware of that. All the African leaders are in full support of coming up with programs to make it easier for the diaspora to move back. We want to look at diaspora who can come to Africa, not just focus on a country that you were born in, but if you are a person of African descent, Africa should matter to you. Africa should be your problem. You must own Africa's problems, understand it, and participate in the development of Africa. For when we have a stable Africa, it now also correlates with an African American who is anchored. It correlates with an Afro-Caribbean who is anchored. It correlates with an Afro-Latino who is anchored. Currently, descendants of the formerly enslaved, they are like a ship without an anchor. The wind blows that way, here they go. Until they are anchored by being accepted by Africa, until they are anchored by participating in the development of Africa. The Jews do it, the Chinese do it, the Indians do it, the Irish do it, African Americans together with the continental Africans. We must make sure that we work together to participate in the development of Africa, because the development and the building of the Africa we want, it is our responsibility first and foremost, and ours alone. Others are welcome to come join us. Others are welcome to help us. Others are welcome to engage us as equal partners, but we must own the building of the Africa that we want as a united front of the African diaspora.
Well, I want to make a deal with you, Ambassador. I want this to be a start of a conversation with you that we have many other times. I think it's a very important conversation, and I'm grateful to you, Ambassador Adikana Chihombori Kwao, former African Union diplomat and founder of the Africa Diaspora Development Initiative. Thanks for your candor, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, and keep up the good work. These are messages that we must continue to put out, because the average American is not aware. The average European citizen is not aware of what the various Western governments are doing. The atrocities have been going on for far too long. They must come to an end. And your program is doing a great job in getting these messages out. We must inform and educate our citizens.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so much.
All right, folks, here it is. That's the presentation. Let me put my light on because my charger was dying, so I have to. Yeah, so let them be light. There was light. All right, so that's the presentation for today. As you hear it, so that's the result of the so-called Biden US-Africa Leadership Summit. Hey. Let me laugh, say Charlie. I feel myself, Papa. You know, these people feel say that they can't do something to just be fooling us. Charlie, it not be this time, it's finished. Yeah, but anyway, it's done. We're done with it. So that's it. It's just another useless summit. It just, you know, yeah, having another breakfast with African leaders, because Biden said he was going to have a breakfast. Because African leaders didn't eat breakfast in Africa. So he invited African leaders to buy breakfast for them. Sorry guys, but that was funny though. Yeah, Biden said he was gonna take African leaders out for breakfast. And he did, by the way. He took them out for breakfast and they had some breakfast, trying to fool them with some burgers, with some cheese. But anyway, for all seriousness, it's not going to happen. It's not, you know, business as usual. They're going to find it hard. America or Europe going to find it hard. That is why you don't treat people bad. Yeah, you don't treat people badly and you expect them to treat you good. And, you know, especially we're talking about years, hundreds of years that you treat African people. You don't do that. And then you turn around and come back and then you want to have sympathy with the African people. No, or you want for African people to have sympathy on you. It's not going to happen. No. The next time, maybe what? After another what? I don't know, years, I don't know when, call them again for another breakfast. You know, they're gonna come and have some breakfast and just have fun with you. I mean, at least, hey, they can take break. I mean, even our job, you take break, right? You take vacation, right? Hey, call them. They can come and take vacation, and then you take them and buy them some breakfast and thing, and they eat. It's not those days where you control African leaders and then you put fear in African leaders, and then that's it. It have come a time the leaders of Africa are afraid of the citizens because the citizens are standing up. It's not those days where you just speak and then even the citizens themselves, they can't do nothing. They are afraid, they're scared. No, this time it's not about putting fear in our African leader. Hey, you can call them, they can come and eat whatever they're gonna eat. It's not going to happen because the people are standing up. We are standing up. It's not going to happen. All right, that time has changed. Those days has gone. You don't treat people and then come back and you want to be friend with them. You wanted to treat you nice. Do you know what people went through? Do you know how many years? 400, 500 years. African people were enslaved. Even up to today in this country, African people are still traumatized. You still have iron on African people's neck. You still treat them. You don't look at it as human being. And then you left them here. And then going, talking to African leaders. America original saying, you have not yet been truthful. If you are truthful, it will start from here. Because America original saying start from here. Like you have to reconcile with the people here first. Then we will know you're serious. Then if you're going out with anything or talking about anything about Africa, then we will know you're serious because you started from here. Then the African that are in the diaspora here will be the African that will go on the African continent and then talk to the African on the continent and say, now you can try these people. Then the people like the African that will leave from here will talk to us. But now we want the African from the diaspora to go to the African continent to talk to us, to talk to the African people on the African continent that America have reconciled. But until then, don't come to us. Solve your problem back here first. Let the people here be satisfied with you. Other than that, we know you are a liar. You are a deceiving person. You are not truthful. You are giving you a bad check. In fact, we don't need those checks. We need to come and give you a bad check back. We are not giving you check again. If we are giving you check, we're going to give you blank check and then know how blank check look like, how blank check make people look stupid. You take a blank check to a bank, standing there acting like you go to bank a money, and then they tell you no money is a void check or blank check. You look stupid, and that's how we're gonna make you look stupid. Solve your problem here first. Let the African in the diaspora be the one to return, okay? Be the one to return. Give them the gift of return. You give them the gift of no return. And up to now, you have not yet reconciled with them. You have not yet apologized to them. You gave reparation to slave holder, but you did not give reparation to the slave who suffered and bled and died. And then you want to go. No, give them the gift of return. When you give them the gift of return, then we will understand you are being real. You are being truthful. They are the one to return to the African continent, to tell us America how they call it, reconcile with our original sin. Now you the sinner. We don't believe you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is today's presentation. We stop here today. I will see you all tomorrow, Saturday show. And next week, Friday, as usual. Thank you for being on. Thank you for your contribution. Up to now, YouTube is not yet accepting donation from YouTube like the old channel because we're still building out this. We have not yet reached to that form of where people can donate to us. So we urge you to share and subscribe, not only for donation purposes, but look, this is where you get the message, not from BBC, not from CNN, not from any Western media. This is where you get it from. So share. let it reach to many as possible as it can. Subscribe. I will see you all. Peace.